ecosystems to animals. I have a question first. Does everyone here know about this animal, or have you seen these animals?
Yes.
Well, they're probably not very unusual because you can see them in many different kinds of habitats, in zoos, and even in cities. Now, these animals are able to do that because they have the ability to adapt to different environmental conditions. And this ability is called ecological flexibility. Now, they are able to do this because they are also generalists. But what happens if you are a highly specialized animal? Okay. Okay, sorry. So in this presentation, I'm going to go over some of the behavioral correlates of the ecological flexibility of a highly specialized primate, the Philippine tarsier. So what are tarsiers? Tarsiers are the small nocturnal primates that can be found in Southeast Asia, particularly in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and in the Philippines. They are among the most specialized primates in the world. They evolved these huge, very big eyes in comparison to their body to help them see in dim light conditions. They have these specialized limbs that allow them to have an extreme vertical clinging and leaping habit. They are also the only purely carnivorous primate. They don't eat any vegetation. Now in the Philippines, we also have tarsiers, and they are mostly found in the southern islands of the Philippines. And they are a really popular animal here. They are considered a flagship species and also an umbrella species for conservation. But they are near threatened. So back in 2014, there was a study where they found distinct genetic lineages among the populations. So as you can see, the populations in Bohol, which is the island that's most popular for tarsiers, and Leyte and Samar, they're all related to one another. And the ones in Mindanao and Dinagat are distinct. Now with this, they were able to deduce that tarsiers are probably more endangered than we think they are. And so in 2014 to 2016, they were listed as one of the most endangered primate species in the world. But as we tried to study them, and in one of our recent studies, when we tried to look into reports about tarsiers in social media, we were able to find that a lot of people actually encounter them in many different habitats, in many different regions. And they can be found all across their geographic range, from forests to rural communities and even agricultural areas. So with this, how do tarsiers persist in these different habitats, both natural and modified? So in our study, we tried to answer this question: do Philippine tarsiers possess ecological flexibility? And the behavior correlates that we tried to look into is, where do Philippine tarsiers sleep and what do they eat? Because sleep is one of the most important aspects in behavior, even for humans. Most of our lives we spend sleeping, and it's the same case for many of the animals that we study. So it's important that they find a place where they can sleep comfortably and without any anxiety. And also, of course, it's important to know what they eat. So we tried to sample for tarsiers in 4 different sites across Mindanao. We went to the northern municipality of Misamis Oriental, where we sampled in an isolated limestone forest. We had a site in southern Mindanao, in South Cotabato, where we sampled in a heavily modified lowland forest that's used for agroforestry. And also in Zamboanga, Sibugay, a contiguous limestone forest, and in Siargao, where there is a mangrove forest inhabited by tarsiers. So in all of these sites, we tried to capture and sample for tarsiers. We attach these small transmitters so that we will be able to track them and follow them in their sleeping sites. And once in a while, we are able to fecal samples from them. So the fecal samples, we extract the DNA from them, and we actually send them to Macrogen in South Korea for sequencing. And once we get back the sequences, we just analyze them to look into the prey items or the food items. So what have we found out? In all of these different habitat types, tarsiers also use a lot of different sleeping sites. So it's kind of hard to see with all of these categories. But we expect tarsiers to sleep in arboreal plants, in trees. But we find that some of the tarsiers use limestone outcrops or rocks. Some sleep in root architecture of trees and even in ground covers like ferns. And there are also tarsiers that use fallen trees or logs. So one of the most common scenes that you'll be able to see in the field are tarsiers using trees as sleeping sites, just like this one. And then we find some of the tarsiers, especially the ones in the more heavily modified habitats, sleeping in sites made entirely of dead plant material or fallen logs. And we also see tarsiers sleeping in banana trees or the ones that are planted. We also have tarsiers utilizing invasive trees. So that's how flexible they are in these habitats. And in some patches within these habitats, we also have tarsiers using bamboo stands. So as you can see, we try to use red light to observe these animals because they're nocturnal and they're sensitive to white light. So this is an example of the tarsiers using limestone outcrops. So as you can see, that's the tarsier, and they are inside the crevices, sleeping there and basically resting throughout the day. So it's interesting why they choose these kinds of sleeping sites. And this is one of the tarsiers that we have trapped in a mangrove forest, sleeping on entirely flooded or submerged areas of the mangrove, sleeping within the root architecture. So as you can see, tarsiers use a diversity of sleeping sites in their different habitats. And once we got the sequences after fecal metaphor coding, we recovered a lot of insect samples, insect sequences. But the ones we found in Siargao, we were able to recover crabs and fish from their fecal samples, which is kind of unusual for tarsiers because most of the reports only indicate that they eat insects. So this just adds support to their flexibility in different habitats. So going back to our question, do Philippine tarsiers possess ecological flexibility? I'd say yes, at least in terms of sleeping site selection and the composition of the animal prey. And this potentially contributed to their persistence amid anthropogenic disturbance and even after extreme climatic events. Because a lot of the sites that we sampled were ravaged by typhoons. If you remember one of the talks of Dr. Edwino, saying that Mount Redondo or the ones in Dinagat or the Siargao Island have experienced a lot of super typhoons. After these typhoons, tarsiers still persist in these areas, and we think that their choice of sleeping sites contribute to this. However, we only were able to sample about 22 tarsiers because they're really hard to catch, and we were only able to analyze a few fecal samples because it's only opportunistic and we rarely have the chance to get them. So more sampling is needed. But our efforts are continuing and we have been doing more work on some of the tarsiers, like the ones in Dinagat, where we were able to find tarsiers in bonsai forests or the stunted forests where trees grow only up to your waist level. And considering that they are extremely arboreal, we found that some of the tarsiers rely on just hopping without the need for clinging onto trees. So there are still a lot of information or still a lot of behavioral observations that have yet to be done for these really popular animals. So with this, I'd like to thank UPLB and CIRCA for hosting the Ecological School and to the insurance for supporting this event. And I thank everyone for allowing me to present our study on tertiary. So if you have any questions, especially about the details of our study, please don't hesitate to approach me. Thank you.